As Matthew McConaughey said, all right, all right, all right. Welcome back for Chapter 9, Managing the Maze. We're going to dive into governance, compliance, and risk management. This is really where our security factors, where cybersecurity starts in an organization, because we need to know the W's, as I'll explain in a minute, as it pertains to our cybersecurity strategy. So let's jump right into part one. We'll look at a quick overview. We'll look at a little bit of the history and the impact of things, and then we'll dive right into the material. So first of all, the idea of GRC, governance, compliance, and risk management, is a strategic necessity. It is imperative that we understand that, okay? And I look at it from the W's. Who will protect? What will they protect? Why will they protect? When will they protect? Right? Who, what, where, when, why? And then, of course, how. How will it be protected? And all of these things are determined by things such as standards we need to follow, laws that we need to follow depending on where our data sits within the world. As we've discussed, right, data in California, specific things, data in Europe, specific things. So this is where it all starts. This is where we determine how we're going to create a cybersecurity strategy based on all of these things. How are we going to create policy, as we'll talk about, that reiterates the importance of data protection and what data needs to be protected, how it's then protected from access, how it's protected when it's at rest, in encryption, etc. It all starts with, right, the managerial side of things, okay? Now, we as cybersecurity professionals don't get to make these decisions on our own. We have to make these within the context of the organization we work for, right? What we have to abide by, what laws, what rules, what standards, what regulations. And then, as we'll see, this is a complex issue, right? This is not something you do overnight. And what we'll see is we then can utilize or lean on some standard frameworks to help us figure all of this out. So learning those frameworks, hugely important. And we'll talk about some common frameworks as we go through. So using our analogy of a maze, right? Governance maps out the pathway through that maze. How are we going to do all this? How are we going to get to the end with a strategic cybersecurity plan for our organization? And of course, every organization is going to have a unique plan, even if they're in the same industry, okay? Depending on what's important to the organization, what's priority, what their budget is, the whole nine yards. So compliance acts as the compass, ensuring decisions meet industry standards and legal requirements. So as we manage this maze, we're looking at compliance. And then risk management is where it all really starts. It's we proactively navigate the maze, right? Looking for the vulnerabilities, identifying the risks, the potential threats to our organization as it pertains to our digital assets. So that's key. Where did all this start? It started well before. Now, you might not think about this, but even before computing, when the Foreign Corrupt Policies Act came out in 1977, okay, it produced this transparency that built a foundation for our cybersecurity policy as it pertains to GCR. All right, so that's the key to know there. In the 80s, right, we finally get laws that are directed towards computing. And that being the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. These acts get updated as technology changes, as threats change, etc., right? But this formalized the legal frameworks for cybersecurity that would follow. And thus these frameworks, depending on the framework, depending on the industry, may already align, okay, with compliance policies that need to be followed within that industry. Bring on the Trusted Computer Systems Evaluation Criteria. So this is known as the Orange Book, so check it out, okay? It basically implements ISO and IEC 2701, which we'll be talking about. We'll definitely be talking about the International Standards Organization. Go further. Here comes more laws, more requirements. Committees sponsoring internal control. Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. So, making sure that, banks are supervised correctly. Recently we've actually seen some banks fail, right, within the United States. These are supposed to keep that from happening and at least provide some transparency into banks that are in trouble. Okay. Sarbanes-Oxley comes about. It mandates stringent government, financial accuracy. And as we know, all of this stuff now is done on computers. It's done within secure networks. And thus, these laws are important to have a basic understanding of. Okay? Other people, especially Sarbanes-Oxley, are required for Sarbanes, but you are the one protecting the data, right? Thus, you're going to need to work with these compliance officers within your organization to meet those requirements as it pertains to digital assets. Okay? Bring on ISO in the 2700 series. This is sort of the main or, de facto standards for managing information security, integrating risk management into governance and compliance. So you're going to want to, go out, use AI, right? Ask, what is GDPR, which by now you know what GDPR is. But you can ask, and when I asked Gemini before doing this, I got this great learning opportunity. Remember, AI is there for you to learn, not for you to earn. So if you've got to write a paper on it, you can go to AI and learn a lot, but you still got to write the paper. You can't have AI write it for you. Okay, that's breaking ethics, and in cybersecurity, we have to be ethical, right? We have to have the higher standards of ethics to demonstrate to everyone within the organization how important it is to be ethical. So, National Institute, NIST, in 2014 came out with their first framework. It provided a very comprehensive approach, so comprehensive, in fact, it is really difficult, right? And time-consuming and cost money, but it's a great framework depending on your organization and organization size. If you have the resources, the human resources, the time, and the financial resources to implement it. Okay, we're going to look at an alternative that I happen to love for small businesses as we go through this chapter. Zero Trust. You should be definitely familiar with the Zero Trust security model. It basically highlights the need for adaptive governance and integrating GCR strategies to address dynamic threats. What does it really say? Don't trust anything. We don't trust the computer coming into our network, a user, etc. We're going to authenticate and authorize everything coming into our organization, right? Now, NIST is being redefined always, as we'll see. There's a new version that came out, the CSF, Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, for 2.0. We'll look at that as well. Okay, so just keep in mind, these are forever changing. And when we talk about forever change, that means we have to keep updated on this stuff. Folks, unfortunately, this is a career that changes constantly. I went back and looked, and I think I've taught over my teaching career of 17 years, I think I've taught 7 different Windows Server operating systems and 9 different client operating systems in that time. Right? Whereas something like the Pythagorean theorem has not changed in 17 years. So what am I trying to say? Give yourself time. Constantly be educating yourself on a daily basis. Ask Google for the latest news on cybersecurity, etc. All right? So in the next section, we'll jump into the content. Thus, in part 2, we're going to start with 9.2, governance in cybersecurity. See you then.